Hello, you're listening to the Beaconator Show. I'm Cade.
And I'm Gabe. We are hoping you're having a great day. And today we're going to discuss an important part of American history, the Great Depression.
The Great Depression was a very low point in our history. Gabe and I feel like the kids nowadays don't really understand or know what people went through or how they lived during this time.
We want to start you off with some facts you may not know about the Great Depression. The Great Depression started in 1929 and ended in 1939.
By 1933, some 13 to 15 million Americans were unemployed. What do you think about that, Gabe?
I think this is very sad and kind of really tough on a lot of people during this time. Many Americans, were trying just to, at least raise a family or start something, in their life. And now they couldn't. And they couldn't make an income, basically. So the average income of the American family dropped by 40% from 1929 to 1932. Income fell from $2,300 to $1,500 per year. What do you think about that?
I think that's really sad because families depend on money to raise their families and use that to kind of get around, and for it to decrease that much, it's pretty sad, and I feel bad for most of the people that were affected by that.
So after this, a lot of people, when they had money before, they didn't really trust the bank. And after this, because during this time, the banks failed, which caused many Americans to lose money and go broke. So basically, they're saying is that the banks were not trusted. They're worried that when the stock market would crash, that they would lose all their money. So, Kate, what is your input on that?
Well, I just think it's a pretty low point when you're not able to trust your bank, because you can't trust it with your money. So I just think that was pretty disappointing during that time. Our last fact here is the Works Project Administration gave permanent jobs to 8.5 million Americans from 1935 to 1943. That decreased the unemployment rates by 16%. What's your input on that, Gabe?
I think that this really helped the Great Depression end after it ended, to get people at least a job and make some kind of income so they could help, their family or anything else they needed to do for money. So I just think that this didn't really seal up all of the issues, but it really started something good and helped America become what it is today.
I totally agree. Great input.
Our next segment is going to be about some of the first-hand experiences during the Great Depression. Here are some interview questions we have collected from our various people. Our first question is, how is the geographic area affected by the Great Depression? The answer to that is cotton mills closed during the Depression. My dad had a barber shop at Clifton. People would come in for haircuts and had no money to pay, so they brought in chicken eggs or other produce to pay. If they don't have the money to pay, my dad wrote it down the charge book. Of course, many were never able to pay them back. So, Kate, what do you think about the geographic area of the Great Depression? What do you elaborate on? What do you think was about that?
Well, I think it's pretty shocking that people would come into a barbershop and pay with, chicken or eggs or other produce to pay for their expenses. I think that's pretty outrageous, but that's what they had to do during that time to get by, and they obviously didn't keep it in a super sophisticated file. It was just a charge book. So it wasn't very advanced technology during that time. It was just, hands-on trading, I guess. And all right, now our next question is, how did the Great Depression affect your childhood life at the time? And that person's answer was, my father was in real estate at that time, and things were hard to sell. He did not trust the banks, so he didn't leave his money in the banks. He was fortunate enough to have some money to buy property. What's your thoughts on that, Gabe?
I think that it's pretty tough as a child, to go through all the things that that your ancestors and you went through as a young child. I mean, I think that's kind of tough for young kids, especially at that age, to deal with. You don't know if you're gonna even have a place to even live in during this time and able to do your schoolwork and stuff. I think it's just tough to be a child during this time. So our third question is, how did it affect you and in your community? The answer is, it affected me because I don't have many clothes. My mother made many of mine, and my sister's clothes were made out of feed sacks. Our family had 2 cows, and we had to sell one because they couldn't afford to feed it. I didn't wear underwear in the summertime because there was no money or material available for it. In the winter, I wore long johns, and my mother patched them when they become worn. So, Cade, how would this affect, during this time, the clothes and how the clothes we have now? It's kind of sad to see during this time that children can't even wear the really nice clothes or have clothes to even wear.
Yeah, I totally agree. They just the way money was back then, they didn't have the money to buy, the top brands or anything. So they'd definitely make clothes out of feed sacks and wear long johns in the winter time, just anything to stay warm. It wasn't about fashion; it was about survival, really. Our next question was, how was the school in your community affected by the Depression? And the answer to that was, I went to a little country school that had 9 grades, and I took a packed lunch every day. Although the principal stole candy at the school for treats for a nickel, I had no money to buy candy with. What do you think about that, Gabe?
I think this is really, sad because, it's good that at least they had a school to go to back then during this time. And, you had to bring a packed lunch and stuff. And although, the principal did sell candy and that stuff. And, if you can't, afford a nickel to buy, a school treat from your principal, I think that's really sad, this is just really sad how, the kids, how they have to go through this, especially in school when you're trying to, try to get, start something, trying to get a job and go to work and stuff, and you're in your school, we have to go through this in your school. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, so those are some of the questions that we had from some of the members that were had firsthand experience in the Great Depression, so you could see a few different viewpoints from this time.
Obviously, this was a very tragic time in our history. We can all learn things from this. Cherish the little things in life, like decent clothes, food, shelter, or any other unrecognized thing you might overlook.
I hope this episode of the Beaconator helped you gain more knowledge about the Great Depression. Thank you all for listening, and tune in next time for another historical event.
Go Box!